Joseph, you're invited to the cookout. I'm like, I've been going to the cookout since I was a kid.
On this episode of Another Act, I talk with Joseph Sikora about his new spinoff series, Being White in a Black World, and about that time 50 Cent took him to the hood. You know, Joseph, I want to go back to when Tommy Egan first came to you. What made you say yes? What was it about this character that made you say, I want to dive in and take hold of him?
When this came, and I got the offer, which was after 5 auditions for the role, I was really grateful. I was really happy. But my good dear friend that I met in Chicago theater, David Schwimmer, told me, all right, I'm proud of you. I'm excited for you. But now the work has to happen because you have to be the same guy on the first day of the first take of the first season, whether that show goes 1 season or 10. Because if you don't stay true to the character that you show up with on day 1, the audience will turn on you and they won't even know why. So as the character expanded, as they started writing different storylines, going further places, getting deeper into the Tommy character, I stuck to the character that I showed up with on day 1. And thank God, Anthony Hemingway, who is the great Anthony Hemingway that we all know and love at this point in our lives, said yes to every decision I made. You know, rather than saying, no, do it like this or this, he said, oh, that's great, yes. So if he didn't say yes and encourage me, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. So I'm so grateful to him as well in the process.
Tommy, he's been a fan favorite for Power since the first installment. At what point did you realize that he was a breakout? Like, was it a particular episode or even like a season or a moment? Like, what was it that solidified to you that he had something that was sticking to audiences?
50 said season 2 to me. He goes, listen, Joe, you're Tommy now. That's it. The culture has claimed you, and that's it. And you just so you know, in 10 years, when you're getting your Oscar, somebody's going to go, you know, the one where Tommy plays the doctor. So I knew that there was something to that.
Black people love Tommy Egan. They love him. We love him. At what point did you realize, because I loved hearing that 50 told you the culture, you know, has claimed you. At what point did you really understand that?
Well, you know, I'm a white guy who's lucky enough to have had Black people that loved me since I was a baby. So I think that was a luxury, but also an important dynamic in Tommy's character. So there was something innately in me that doesn't have to try to be comfortable around Black people or try to emulate that. It was like there was a truth in my understanding of the greatness of Black culture. And also I knew how much I owed Black culture in my own life. You know, being a fan of not just like hip hop music or I mean, soul music of the church, even going to St. Sabina's, my father's friends and family down in Auburn Gresham in the south side of Chicago. And when people are like, oh, you know, Joseph, you're invited to the cookout. I'm like, I've been going to the cookout since I was a kid. But like, thank you. You know, so I think that was a positive thing to add to the character and I think a necessary thing to add to the character. But also to realize and truly cerebrally and just know that Tommy Egan was a product of Black culture.
Yeah.
So I think that's better than any award. That's better than any compliment you could ever get is by you know, Black culture saying you got it. We accept you.
It makes total sense to me why a Black audience in particular would gravitate towards Tommy. If you grew up in the inner city or near the inner city, Black folks knew a white kid like Tommy Egan, you know, similar economical circumstances where the whiteness or the white privilege didn't necessarily mean you got to escape what everyone else was going through as well. And it sounds like that may have rang true for you in some elements with your upbringing in Chicago, which brings me to 50 Cent told me that he actually took you to the hood. So you can have some experiences, you know, that might speak to what Black folks go through. Tell me about what that was like.
Well, I think that 50 just didn't really know that, like, how much I've been to the hood. So I was like, oh, this is great. But what he also didn't know is that there's a lot of places in New York that you're like, yo, this neighborhood, it looks, you know, it looks like it's probably bad. It is run down. You know, people are hugging the block. all that. Whereas Southside Jamaica is not so different than a lot of places on the South Side of Chicago. Some places on the South Side, you're like, wow, forget it. It looks dangerous. But some don't look dangerous, but they are very, very dangerous. Southside Jamaica is like that. I mean, a lot of people have beautiful kept lawns and the houses look nice, but like, don't get it twisted. You know, you'll get got right there. You won't make it out of that neighborhood. So I think 50 was generous enough to bring us to where Tommy and Ghost would have come from, because I think it's great. So when I didn't have, I mean, I had ideas of where I would have, you know, in my mind, but when you see the character and you see in their eyes, they know what they're looking at. Like I knew what barbecue place I was going to. I knew where Tommy played basketball. You know, because 50 took us around, and Omari and I, Omari Hardwick, obviously, who played Ghost wonderfully, he and I went back to the neighborhood a couple of times too, just to make sure that we were acquainted with the reality of where these guys come from.
Now you're a leading man in your own series. What does that feel like for you, Joseph?
I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful to the incredible cast that we have now, all the way down from Isaac Keys and Chris Lofton to Tommy Flanagan, Lily Simmons, Shane Harper, and Gabrielle Ryan. What an incredible cast. Lucian Cambridge, Ahmad Ferguson, the great Guy Van Swearingen of Chicago theater legends. All of these people that's what really was about to me. That it's a luxury and an honor to be the lead of this series. But to me, the best part about it was having such an incredibly talented ensemble. So it's a true ensemble piece as well. And these actors shine.
Were you really vocal about things that ring very authentically true to Chicago because you're from Chicago? And now this series, as I was telling 50, it's the first time that that this universe has gone outside of New York. And so Chicago gets to be a character. Were you like, not all Chicagoans love deep dish pizza or whatever the case is? Like, what did you bring to this series as a native Chicagoan?
I had to relearn about the city as well, because I had been gone for so long that really and truly, I'm not a New Yorker. I don't claim New York, but I've been here for half of my life, you know? So it's like, if it wasn't shot in New York, it wasn't home. And then so when Tommy was going back to Chicago, I showed up early, and I did 3 ride-alongs with the police. I met with friends of mine who I grew up with, whose cousins were, you know, gang leaders who were in prison one guy was in prison for 16 years and just got out. So I asked him, you know, because it was very similar to the Diamond character, you know, how was it like? What was your involvement with the gang in there? But I had to relearn the city in a lot of ways. So a lot of it is art imitating life of Tommy getting acquainted with Chicago and me getting reacquainted with Chicago and having the understanding that you have to relearn this. The gang culture and street culture has changed since I left. The law and the governing bodies has changed since I left. The gentrification has made neighborhoods that I used to be hood up, gloves on, to be less white walking through the neighborhood to get to the Western train, that now I couldn't afford to buy a condo you know, down the alley from that. So reacquainting myself with the dynamics of the city, I think, was really important.
I think people are really excited seeing Chicago in this way, because I don't think that we've seen this representation of Chicago before. You know,
I think you're totally right. I think that we're doing what Power did great. I got to give Courtney a lot of respect for how she depicted New York City. A true representation of the diversification of people in New York were truly represented through the show of Power. Black, white, brown, Asian, everybody. We really did a great job. And I think that Power Book 4 Force, you know, is attempting a similar representation of people and showing Chicago in that light, and working towards making Chicago a true character. I think we paint in broad strokes in the first season. People will get in there. And I think that as the seasons continue, we're going to go through with a fine-tooth comb, and you're going to get to know the inner workings of how the city that works.
How's Tommy changed your life? And I ask that because, I mean, we've seen you in other roles, you know, since you brought Tommy Egan to life. Ozark is a really great example, but how has Tommy changed your life and maybe even changed how you approach work moving forward?
It has changed my life. I think we obviously know financially having a job as an actor, you can actually pay your bills, which I couldn't do most of my life. That had changed my life, but then also getting to live with the character and all the hours that I had put in front of a camera or on a stage or behind a microphone before this job got amplified, times 10 with all of the time in front of the camera. Being humble enough and wise enough to ask questions so I know what every single person on a set does. I know what every job is. I know where everybody is supposed to go and supposed to be. So I don't have to ask all of those questions anymore. So it really advanced my knowledge of the entirety of the process in an entirety. And then Tommy Egan gave me a huge amount of confidence of making this character and doing the work like I would have done in any theater production or any small guest star role. You do the work of who that person is. Can I tell you one thing that's coming up next? It's the
Please,
movie.
yes.
It's the movie Fear that's coming out. It's me, King Batch, T.I., Terrence J, Annie Alonso, Ido Goldberg, directed by Deon Taylor. As who you know Deon Taylor, who directed
Yeah.
Black and Blue, The Intruder with Dennis Quaid, me, Michael Ealy, Megan Good. And so we did this horror film that takes place during the pandemic, which we're still living in, and
Yes.
all of these strains that keep coming out. Deon actually predicted that within the storyline. So it's interesting, but it's a suspense. It's another thriller, but it's also a horror film at the same time with all of these wonderful twists. And that'll be coming out hopefully in March. So look out for that too.